First and foremost, all you should be saying is thank you, Bert and Tom. Because without us, it is a bunch of people doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Like we broke up. We definitely
it
you
was
to Kim Kardashian.
It was a comedy up until you guys started. Then you guys got to really change the tone a bit. You had to make everybody appreciative of laughter.
I had no idea. I told him this.
I'm still living in oblivion. I had a blast. I think we did great. I've not met one person that did not like what we did.
So a few weeks ago, Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer talked about their horrible performance at the roast of Tom Brady, and they ended up making a bunch of excuses for why things went the way they did. For example, Tom revealed that he didn't even make it to the rehearsal, and both of them were claiming that the whole thing wasn't even their idea to begin with, which it's a little bit silly. But what I found more interesting was how whenever other podcasters or other comics would talk about the roast, they would either completely ignore and not talk about Bert and Tom's sets, or they would just give him the most basic and fake compliment trying to be nice. For example, the time that Jimmy Carr was on the show right after the roast, it was clear that he was being way too nice. He was being extremely nice. And of course, he was on their show. He wasn't trying to be rude. But I don't think he was being honest about what he really thought of their sets. And well, today they just uploaded an episode with Tony Hinchcliffe, which was really good. And a lot of wild things were said, from Tony actually roasting and making fun of their horrible performance at the roast, to also sharing some pretty interesting things that happened behind the scenes. But more importantly, I think it was a perfect example of two comics that have a completely different approach to what they do. On one hand, you have Tony, who actually cares about his craft and put a lot of effort into the whole thing. And on the other hand, you have two comics who've been having it extremely easy for the past 5 years. Everything has been handed to them, and they just completely wasted and fumbled the opportunity of a lifetime that a lot of comedians would kill for.
And the roasts were huge for a minute.
Huge. Yeah. And the roast, before I started writing on it, the writers that were on the roast before I started writing on it were Whitney Cummings, Anthony Jeselnik, So there was a clear path.
Yeah.
So on the first roast, I'm like, okay, so if I kill it in this writer's room and get a ton of jokes in and really focus, I can get on the next one.
Yeah.
10 later, Trump, boom, Rob Lowe, Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin, you name it. I'm like, that close, never got on one.
So you never get your shot, and then...
Never get my shot, but I'm super close with Jeff Ross, who, you know, I worked with directly on a lot of those things. He really does executive produce all of these things. Yeah. He knows how to do it.
Did you ever see Jeff? I don't want to interrupt. I want you to keep talking about this going forward with this. But did you ever see Jeff?
Did you ever see
Jeff?
Don't want to interrupt?
I don't know.
No, go ahead. Yeah. Seems like you kind of do, dude.
I've been really good this conversation. You're my partner. I've been really good.
Very proud of you.
I can't imagine how many times you've wanted to interrupt if you think you've been really good. Damn, your crew is cracking up right now. You must interrupt a lot, huh?
You were saying?
No, go ahead. You already interrupted. You might as well follow through now.
Nope.
Go ahead. Come on. You already did it.
You said,
technically, you already interrupted. Finish it.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a bad interruption.
Yeah. It was Jeff.
Now, I do think that Tony's story about him getting rejected by Comedy Central, Netflix, and then having to go out of his way to make something happen and put himself in those positions, it is a pretty cool story, but it's so wild how someone like Tony, who has had a lot of experience writing for comedy roasts in the past, didn't have the same opportunities or didn't get the same treatment as someone like Tom Segura or Bert Kreischer, who had zero experience when it came to comedy roasts, which I think that does show that just like Hollywood, Netflix is not that far off, and they still have their favorite comics, their favorite people that they like to work with, that they know they will toe the company line, they won't give them any trouble, and are a pretty safe bet. Because to be fair, when it comes to Tom Segura, he is still a legit comedian, and both him and Bert Kreischer do look like comics. But when it comes to Tony Hinchcliffe, even though next to me he's a 10, you know, he doesn't look like a comic. He doesn't look like he's about to write one of the best jokes you've ever heard. And instead, it looks like he's about to try and sell you some solar panels or try to get you to join a religion. And that is something that a lot of other comics have talked about in the past. They've mentioned how some of the best comedians that they've ever met work for TV sitcoms or late night shows as writers. However, from what I've heard, usually the comics that are really good writers are not the best performers. But obviously with Tony Hinchcliffe, that's not the case, because not only is he a great writer, but he could also perform very, very well. And also what's pretty wild is how much influence and power Tom Segura has when it comes to Netflix, because even though they didn't have the best performance, I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually already invited to the next roast.
Well, first of all,
Well,
if you
yeah,
want,
so wait, how
if you
did
want to
this-
get into it,
How did
Yes,
this come
yes.
about?
kind of crazy because this is kind of like a hot scoop.
Yeah, let's
All right, so let's get into it. First of all, I've never been a Netflix darling. The special that I was lucky to get to make with a Steadicam in 2015, 7 years
Yes.
into my career, was a miracle. They were looking for something different with continuity, and it was like a year after Birdman came out. So I'm like, what if somebody shot a special like that
In one
right?
take, yeah.
And all I had was one show at the Ice House. I wasn't that good. The difference between a 7 or 8 year
For sure.
comedian doing an hour special
15 years is-
right?
yeah.
It's light years, and it seemed like they weren't knocking at the door anyway. You know, I think they have a thing with likable people, or a thing that they can see, or something that tests well, or whatever. And so they didn't want me on this thing to start, and I knew that. Like,
This was clear?
I'm just not an industry guy. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly, I've my hit show is on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you don't see me much more other than that. So, but I have a great team, a great agent, and a great manager for the first time ever. And so I hit them up and I'm like, hey, I'm making you guys all this money. I want you to do something for me. I want to get on this thing, which is crazy because in the beginning, when they first announced it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're going to do a roast to Tom Brady. That's great. But as it got closer and I'm like, live, Tom Brady. Did I have a feeling this might be the biggest comedy event?
And even Tony himself mentioned how he knows that Netflix will go for the more likable comedians or comics that test well, which is similar to what we said about Netflix having their favorite comedians that they rely on. And maybe that is the reason why Tony doesn't have as many comedy specials as someone like Tom Segura. Or maybe there is a chance that similar to how comedy roasts are a completely different ballgame, maybe comedy specials are a whole different game that Tony doesn't have a ton of experience in. And just because someone is good at roasting or quick on their feet doesn't necessarily mean that it will translate to them being able to do a 1 hour comedy special that will end up being a good product. For example, we all know that Jeff Ross is one of the GOATs when it comes to roasting. However, I don't remember one single bit that's been told by him that it's not in the context of a comedy roast. But when it comes to Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Shane Gillis, Anthony Jeselnik, Russell Peters, and even Tom Segura, I do remember at least 2 bits from their comedy specials. And that is kind of how I gauge how much I liked a comedy special. So in my opinion, the real test will be seeing what kind of material Tony Hinchcliffe puts out on his next comedy special. Because like I've said before, I've seen him live, and if he simply used that 1 hour and made it into a comedy special, it would definitely be a good comedy special, but it would not make nearly the same amount of noise as his roast performance did, if that makes any sense. And by the way, if you made it this far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And I didn't just want to hit up Ross and be like, hey, get me on this thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
He knew that, you know, I'm a great guy for the job. If it's live on Netflix, who better than the guy that roasts people live
Every week.
yeah. on a big ass show in front of a big ass audience that happens to do arenas, which is where this is being shot a few days
a perfect
before
fit.
I do it anyway. Plus I've written on the last 10 Comedy Central roasts. Plus I've done crazy roasts myself. And so it was kind of like all that mixed together. And then I was mentioning it to Joe that Netflix is doing this Tom Brady roast. And he goes, I'll message Tom Brady. You know, Joe.
Really?
Joe's like, I'll message Tom Brady for you. I'm like, really? You do that? And sure enough, he does. And he says, Tony's the best. He sent me a screenshot of it. Tony's the best roaster in the world. You got to have Tony Hinchcliffe. Check out this clip of Tony Hinchcliffe. He sent him me roasting Snoop Dogg.
It's a good one.
And he sent me the picture, the screen grab, and Brady goes, I'm gonna send this right along. Looks great. And still nothing. Still they weren't budging.
Damn.
Yep. And yeah, guys,
People hate you.
I know it's not as easy. I know. Not all of us are fucking darlings like you fucking chubby-headed fucks. Anyway, so
We should tell you our story.
shit.
I think it'll really frustrate you.
I think you hate our story.
oh well.
No, I'll tell you when we're done. I'll tell
If
you
it's
when.
anything like the set, I probably would hate it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
you guys phoned it in like an Israeli airstrike. I'm joking. Anyway.
No, finish
Yeah,
it. Wait,
Bert was
finish.
lip syncing my set and his set at the same time.
Tell me.
Okay, anyway.
Wait. So this is pretty huge in the fact that the guy who is the roast is about,
Yeah.
happens to be one of the most powerful, most
Right.
famous people, is like, I like this guy, and still nothing.
Right.
And what's funny is that it was very clear that both Tom and Bert Kreischer were trying to play it off, trying to play it cool, like if they didn't really care about what happened. However, Bert Kreischer could not act to save his life. He was clearly very upset and not liking any of the comments, any of the negative comments or criticism that he was receiving at all. And that's when Tony doubled down and started to destroy them, which makes sense because if you're Tony and you're telling both of them how much you struggled just to get an opportunity to be on the roast, and then once you got on, all the other obstacles that you had to jump through just so that you could perform and do your set like everyone else, and then you listen to Tom and Bert Kreischer talk about how they treated the whole thing like if it was a school project and they cared and they didn't really care about it. I mean, I would be mad. Now, to be fair, all three of them are part of the Rogan sphere, which is already a huge advantage that not every comedian has. For example, when it comes to Tony, Joe Rogan himself actually texted Tom Brady to let him know about Tony Hinchcliffe and how good he was, which is absolutely wild. But to be fair, once they're up there, there's nothing Joe Rogan can do to help them, and you were able to see who actually took it serious and who didn't.
I was like, that's cool. I'm in for that. I'll get lit up. I'm not good at roast jokes. I'm not good at making fun of people. So, and Jeff knew that. And Jeff's like, well, we want to do something different.
Yeah.
Tom's still like, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, no.
Smart. You were right.
I was like, I don't. They're like, well, we want to break up. It was, I guess, sort of a version of what they ended up with you. They were like,
Yeah.
we want to do something different.
Yeah.
We want to do the two of you. And I was like, and then we both. I thought, I go, you want us to both go to the podium together?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, just like almost like a variety piece.
Right.
Maybe a screen. At first, it was like pitched as like a sports center thing. So then we pitched this idea about making fun of him with like whiteness,
Yeah.
being a psycho, and they're like, oh yeah, no one's doing that angle yet. Sent them a script. They send their script, like their punch-up script, combine the two.
Yeah. You're like, that's good enough.
Kind of.
That's great.
I'll tell you what. I will
No
say- I
reason to
will-
work on this anymore. It's just the most watched thing ever.
First and foremost, all you should be saying is thank you, Bert and Tom, because without us, it is a bunch of people doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Like we broke up. We definitely.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it was
Kim
it
Kardashian.
was a comedy up until you guys started. And then you guys got to really change the tone a bit. You had to make everybody appreciative of laughter.
I had no idea. I told him this.
I'm still living in oblivion. I had a blast. I think we did great. I've not met
Look.
one person that did not like what we did.
No,
I don't
of
read
course.
comments because there's like, it's
Right.
like, what are you gonna shit on someone who didn't maybe do as well as you or Nikki? That's the thing,
Right,
It's
of
like, what
course.
is as well as you and Nikki who were next level.
Now, we did mention this before, but the fact that Tom and Bert Kreischer were so unprepared and didn't even go to the rehearsal, I think does show that they're both not ready for the next level of producing and making stuff, especially for Netflix, because even Tony explained how he wasn't even supposed to be roasting people and that the original idea was for him to stay at the table and do the Kill Tony thing. However, while they were doing the rehearsals, Tony showed them what it would be like if he was actually roasting people, and he actually sold it, which is pretty wild, and it shows how important the rehearsal was for the entire thing. And Tom Segura, on the other hand, didn't even go to the rehearsals, which ended up being a massive mistake. Now, to be fair, it does seem like Tom Segura is definitely taking it a lot better than Bert Kreischer is, because, or at least he's not showing any emotions, because Bert Kreischer, on the other hand, is going out of his way to argue and call out people that are saying that they had a bad performance, which doesn't make any sense.
This will probably make some people crazy, maybe make me crazy. A few nights later, I was at the forum for my show.
Yeah.
Netflix executives came by that show, talking about the roast, asked if I wanted to be involved in the next roast.
Oh, wow.
And that's after that set.
Damn, they didn't even ask me that. That's
Yeah,
how
isn't that crazy?
hated I am by the industry. Because you guys went out there and did what you did. And you're already being invited to the next one.
Yeah, it isn't even booked yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I f***ing decimate, and
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going
Well,
on.
we'll see if we can put a word in for you.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Hey,
I
Tony,
will
would
send you.
hey,
I'll send you a screen grab of the
I
text
love
I
it.
sent.
I can't wait.
Tony, yeah, you want to? If you want, you can write for us.
But
I will tell you, I don't give a fuck what anyone says on the internet. We didn't die. We had a great time, and we sat down confident. We're like, whew, dodged a bullet. The internet's going to decide to hate
Of
whatever they want to hate. I don't really give a fuck about
you
those
guys are
people.
balling out of control.
But no,
of
it
course
was
they're gonna hate.
it was kind of funny though, because like even though it wasn't fever pitch like your guys, like we're getting laughs throughout this bit.
Of course.
So we sat down. Tom Brady was like, that was great. He after the Netflix people, the after party, I had to call him. I go, do you know that like online they're like, you guys ate shit? And I was like, I had no idea. We're super happy for you
Yeah, thank
personally,
you.
for the podcast too. Also, we will call you on the next roast.
Yeah, I'm
ahead of
gonna
time.
help you guys out.
I'll do the same set.
Thank you.
I'll do the same set.
Thank
and you
you.
can suck my dick, America.
The world, it's global, Bert. It's the whole world.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Now, when it comes to Tony Hinchcliffe, it is funny that he seems to be one of the few comics who not only likes to receive compliments, but also adds on top of that and compliments himself. Now, even though I don't agree with comics taking themselves way too serious, you gotta respect the mentality and having an insanely high ego, because that is what made Tony pressure everyone into letting him be on the roast, and it ended up working out for him very, very well. However, I do think that kind of attitude could be dangerous, because Tom Segura at some point was exactly where Tony Hinchcliffe is right now. You know, he still is very close friends with Joe Rogan, but he was Joe Rogan's best friend. He was seen as the most successful and the brightest comedian out of the whole Rogan sphere. And his own attitude, his own choices, that is what caused the entire show to drop as bad as it did. And also, it's very clear that Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer take themselves way too serious now, and they no longer see themselves as, you know, some silly comics, and instead they're more like actors and Hollywood talents. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting episode, and it was cool seeing both Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura get roasted for their horrible performance. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Dislike if you didn't like the video. But that is all we have for today. See ya.